Two elderly women were enjoying a late lunch and a drink at their favourite restaurant one afternoon. Ethel, glancing over at Mabel, noticed something unusual about her friend's ear and said, "Mabel, you've got a suppository in your left ear." Mabel, surprised, pulled it out and examined it closely. "A suppository? Really?" She then paused, a look of realization dawning on her face. "Ethel, I'm so glad you found this. Now I know where my hearing aid has been hiding all this time." A customer asked, "In what aisle could I find the Irish sausage?" The clerk asks, "Are you Irish?" The guy, clearly offended, says, "Yes, I am. But let me ask you something. If I had asked for Italian sausage, would you ask me if I was Italian? Or if I had asked for German bratwurst, would you ask me if I was German? Or if I asked for a kosher hot dog, would you ask me if I was Jewish? Or if I had asked for a taco, would you ask if I was Mexican? Or if I asked for Polish sausage, would you ask if I was Polish?" The clerk says, "No, I probably wouldn't." The guy says, "Well then, because I asked for Irish sausage, why did you ask me if I'm Irish?" The clerk replied, "Because you're in Halford's clothing store." A businessman dragged himself home and barely made it to his chair before he dropped, exhausted. His sympathetic wife was right there with a tall, cool drink and a comforting word. "My, you look tired," she said. "You must have had a hard day today. What happened to make you so exhausted?" "It was terrible," her husband said. "The computer broke down and all of us had to do our own thinking." A man went to a doctor for some treatment. The doctor told him, "To cure your condition, you need a special remedy, the milk of a woman." The man, somewhat confused but desperate, found a woman who agreed to help. After much hesitation, he began to drink the milk. The woman, seeing the effort, said, "If you need anything else, just let me know." The man, without missing a beat, replied, "Well, if you could throw in some biscuits, that would make it even better." During a concert, little Johnny sits in the front row, waiting for the concert to begin. A friend asks, "Johnny, how did you manage to get a ticket to the concert?" Johnny replies, "I got a ticket from my sister." The friend asks, "And where is your sister?" Johnny says, "Back at home, looking for her ticket." One afternoon, little Billy turned his mother's broom into a trusty steed and had a grand time riding it around until dusk began to settle. When he was done, he left the broom on the back porch. Later, as his mother was tidying up the kitchen, she realized the broom was missing. She called out to Johnny, "Where's my broom?" "It's on the back porch, Mom," Johnny answered. "Please go get it for me," she requested. Johnny hesitated. "I'm afraid of the dark, Mom." His mother smiled reassuringly. "The Lord is out there too, Johnny. There's nothing to fear." Billy, overhearing the conversation, opened the back door just a crack and called out into the darkness, "Lord, if you're out there, could you please hand me the broom?" There were 5 people aboard an airplane that was experiencing engine trouble and about to crash. The problem? There were only 4 parachutes. As everyone tried to figure out who should get the parachutes, the first person stood up and said, "I'm the smartest person to ever walk the earth. The world cannot afford to lose me." Without waiting for a response, he grabbed a parachute and jumped out of the plane. The second person said, "I'm a mother and my family depends on me. I can't let them down." She quickly took a parachute and leapt out as well. The third person declared, "I'm the head of my household and the sole breadwinner. My family's survival depends on me." With that, he grabbed a parachute and jumped too. Now, only 2 people remained, a 65-year-old man and a 12-year-old boy. The old man turned to the boy and said, "Son, I've lived a full life. You're young and have your whole future ahead of you. You take the last parachute." The boy looked at him and smiled. "Don't worry, sir. There are still 2 parachutes left." The old man was puzzled. "How's that possible?" The boy chuckled and said, "Well, the guy who thought he was the smartest person on earth, he grabbed my backpack." A man took his blonde girlfriend to her very first football game. They had amazing seats, sitting right behind their team's bench. After the game, he asked her, "So, what did you think of the experience?" "Oh, I loved it," she said enthusiastically. "The tight pants and all those big muscles were great, but I just don't get why they were fighting so hard over 25 cents. Confused, he asked, "What do you mean?" "Well," she explained, "they flipped a coin at the beginning. One team won it, and then all game long they kept yelling, 'Get the quarterback! Get the quarterback!' I mean, seriously. It's just a quarter." The madam opened the door to see a frail, elderly gentleman. "Can I help you?" the madam asked. "I want Natalie," the old man replied. "Sir, Natalie is one of our most expensive ladies. Perhaps someone else." "No, I must see Natalie." Just then, Natalie appeared and announced to the old man that she charges $1,000 per visit. Without blinking, the man reached into his pocket and handed her 10 $100 bills. The two went up to a room for an hour, whereupon the man calmly left. The next night he appeared again, demanding to see Natalie. Natalie explained that no one had ever come back 2 nights in a row and that there were no discounts. It was still $1,000 a visit. Again, the old man took out the money. The two went up to the room and an hour later he left. When he showed up the 3rd consecutive night, no one could believe it. Again, he handed Natalie the money, and up to the room they went. At the end of the hour, Natalie questioned the old man. "No one has ever used my services 3 nights in a row. Where are you from?" The old man replied, "I'm from Philadelphia." "Really?" replied Natalie. "I have family who lives there." "Yes, I know," said the old man. "Your father died, and I'm your sister's attorney. She asked me to give this $3,000 to you." A man walks into a bar. He sees a beautiful, well-dressed woman sitting on a bar stool alone. He walks up to her and says, "Hi there, how's it going tonight?" She turns to him, looks him straight in the eyes and says, "I'll anybody, anytime, anywhere, any place, it doesn't matter to me." The guy raises his eyebrows and says, "No kidding. What law firm do you work for?" A guy goes in for a job interview and sits down with the boss. The boss asks him, "What do you think is your worst quality?" The man says, "I'm probably too honest." The boss says, "That's not a bad thing. I think being honest is a good quality." The man replies, "I don't care about what you think." At a bustling mall cafeteria, 3 rowdy teenage boys found themselves seated at a table with a gentle-looking elderly woman. One of the boys, eager to stir up some mischief, nudged his friend and loudly asked, "Hey, did your parents ever bother getting married?" Playing along, the second boy smirked and replied, "Nope, never did." The first boy, undeterred, turned to the third and asked, "What about you?" The third boy grinned and chimed in, "Oh, my mom doesn't even know who my dad is." The elderly woman set down her coffee, looked up at them with a warm smile, and said, "Pardon me, but would one of you little be so kind as to pass the sugar?" A tough guy husband marries a stunning, laid-back woman. On their wedding night, he lays out his rules. "I'll come and go as I please. I'll stay out late. I'll go hunting, fishing, or out with the guys. I won't answer to anyone, and dinner should be ready unless I say I'm not coming home. Got it?" His new wife smiles sweetly and replies, "Of course. Just one thing. Every night at 7, there will be whether you're home or not." The husband, a bit puzzled but still confident, grins and says, "Well, that's certainly a surprise. I guess I'll be home by 7 then." The wife winks. "You'll be home, or you'll be missing out." My daughter called me at work to say I had received a call from Josh at the bank regarding my account. Returning the call to my bank, the operator asked what Josh's last name was. I explained that he hadn't left his last name. Then she asked for his department, and I said that I didn't know that either. "There are 1,500 employees in this building, ma'am," she told me rather sharply. So I asked her for her name. "Danielle," she said. "And your last name?" I asked. "Sorry," she replied. "We're not allowed to give last names." A mafia godfather finds out that his bookkeeper, Guido, has cheated him out of $10 million. His bookkeeper is deaf. That was the reason he got the job in the first place. It was assumed that Guido would hear nothing, so he would never have to testify in court. When the godfather goes to confront Guido about his missing $10 million, he takes along his lawyer who knows sign language. The godfather tells the lawyer, "Ask him where the money is." The lawyer, using his sign language, asks Guido, "Where's the money?" Guido signs back, "I don't know what you're talking about." The lawyer tells the godfather, he says he doesn't know what you're talking about. The godfather pulls out a pistol, puts it to Guido's head, and says, "Ask him again or I'll kill him." The lawyer signs to Guido, "He'll kill you if you don't tell him." Guido trembles and signs, "Okay, you win. The money is in a brown briefcase, buried behind the shed at my cousin Bruno's house." The godfather asks the lawyer, "What did he say?" The lawyer replies, "He says you don't have the balls to pull the trigger." A man was pulled over for driving too fast, even though he thought he was driving just fine. Officer, "You were speeding." Man, "No, I wasn't." Officer, "Yes, you were. I'm giving you a ticket." Man, "But I wasn't speeding." Officer, "Tell that to the judge." The officer gives man the ticket. Man, "Would I get another ticket if I called you a jerk?" Officer, "Yes, you would." Man, "What if I just thought that you were..." Officer, "I can't give you a ticket for what you think." Man, "Fine, I think you're a jerk." A wife had been asking her husband to fix a few things around the house. One day she complained, "Honey, the grass is way too high. Can you cut it?" The husband, looking frustrated, replied, "What do I look like to you? A landscaper?" The next day, the sink started dripping, and she asked him, "The faucet's leaking. Can you fix it?" His reply, rolling his eyes, was, "What do I look like to you? A plumber?" 2 days later, the light bulb went out in the kitchen. She sighed and asked, "Honey, can you change this light bulb?" He threw up his hands and grumbled, "What am I, an electrician?" Days later, the husband came home from work to find the lawn mowed, the faucet repaired, and the light bulb replaced. Surprised, he asked, "What happened here?" His wife, smiling, replied, "Well, our new neighbour came over and took care of everything." Curious, he asked, "How did you pay him?" She shrugged. "He gave me 2 options, bake him a cake or have S3X with himself." Relieved, the husband asked, "Okay, so what kind of cake did you bake him?" The wife smirked. "What do you think I am, Betty Crocker?" A woman visited a doctor's office for an examination. A few minutes into the checkup, loud screeching erupted from the room, followed by the woman bolting out as if fleeing for her life. It took considerable effort, but a nurse eventually managed to calm her down enough to get the story. The nurse stormed into the doctor's office, furious, and yelled, "Doctor, how could you? Mrs. Smith is 82 years old, and you told her she's pregnant." Without looking up from his notes, the doctor replied calmly, "Does she still have the hiccups?" An artist, a lawyer, and a computer scientist are discussing the merits of a mistress. The artist tells of the passion, the thrill which comes with the risk of being discovered. The lawyer warns of the difficulties. It can lead to guilt, divorce, and bankruptcy. Not worth it. Too many problems. The computer scientist says, "It's the best thing that's ever happened to me. My wife thinks I'm with my mistress. My mistress thinks I'm home with my wife. And I can spend all night on the computer." A boy asks his parents for a new computer because his old one is running too slowly. His parents tell him it's not in the budget. Determined, the boy goes into the kitchen, grabs the microwave and food processor, comes back, and begins attaching the 2 appliances together. His parents see the boy and ask him what he's doing. He says, "First I'm building the microprocessor, and then I'll see what else we got lying around." Herm, an 85-year-old retiree, recently had a checkup with his doctor. About a week later, the doctor spots Herm walking along the boardwalk, his arm around a stunning young woman. Surprised, the doctor stops him and says, "Herm, you must be feeling fantastic." With a grin, Herm replies, "Just doing what you said, Doc. You told me to get a hot mama and stay cheerful." The doctor shakes his head and exclaims, "No, Herm. I said, your heart has a murmur. Be careful." An elderly married couple had just settled into bed when the old man let out a loud fart and declared, 7 points. His wife, confused, rolled over and asked, "What was that all about?" The old man grinned and replied, "It's fart football, not wanting to be left out." A few minutes later, the wife let one rip and proudly announced, "Touchdown, tie game." After a short pause, the old man fired off another and boasted, "Aha, 14-7, I'm winning." Determined to keep up, the wife let loose with another big one, saying, "Touchdown, tie game again." Then, with a little squeaker, she added, "Field goal, I'm in the lead, 17-14. Now feeling the pressure, the old man couldn't stand the thought of losing. Determined not to be debated, he pushed with all his might, but gave a little too much effort. To his horror, he accidentally pooped in the bed. His wife, shocked, asked, What on earth just happened? The old man sighed and said, "Half time. Time to switch sides." Bob was midway through a 40-day spiritual retreat, focused entirely on meditation and self-discipline. One day, Satan decided to shake things up and appeared before him, disguised as a breathtakingly beautiful woman. Bob raised an eyebrow, took a deep breath, and said, "All right, what's the catch?" The woman smiled seductively and said, "I'm here to be your wife. We can make it official right now." Bob, curious and amused, decided to go along with it. After they sealed the deal, the woman burst into laughter and said, "Gotcha, Bob. I'm Satan, and I just broke your 40-day retreat." Without missing a beat, Bob grinned and replied, "Break it? Nah, I signed up to see what it's like being married to Satan." Grandpa and Grandma always lit up when they reminisced about their younger days together. One day, they decided to relive those moments, to make it feel like yesterday once more. They planned a special date by the riverbank, the same place they frequented in their youth. The next morning, Grandpa woke up at 6 a.m., filled with excitement. He rushed to the riverbank, gathered a big bouquet of wildflowers before the sun rose, and eagerly waited for his sweetheart. But as the day passed, disappointment set in. Grandma never showed, even as the sun disappeared below the horizon. Fuming, Grandpa returned home, opened the door, and found Grandma lounging on the sofa, resting her head on a pillow. He threw the flowers to the floor and demanded, "Why didn't you come to our date?" Hiding her face in the pillow, Grandma sheepishly replied, "Mom wouldn't let me go." Frank the farmer had a nagging wife. She made his life miserable. The only real peace he got was when he was out in the field ploughing. One day, while in the field, Frank's wife brought him his lunch. Then, while he quietly ate, she berated him with a constant stream of nagging and complaining. Suddenly, Frank's old donkey kicked up his back legs, struck her in the head, killing her instantly. At the funeral, the priest noticed that when the women offered their sympathy, Frank would nod his head up and down. But when the men came up and spoke quietly to him, he would shake his head from side to side. After the mourners left, the priest approached Frank and asked, "Why did you nod your head up and down to all the women and shook from side to side to all the men?" "Well," Frank replied, "the women all said how nice she looked, and her dress was so pretty, so I agreed by nodding my head up and down. And all the men asked, 'Is that donkey for sale?'" A policeman pulls a farmer over for speeding and proceeds to write him a ticket. The farmer notices some flies buzzing around annoying the officer. The policeman is shooing flies more than he's writing. The farmer says, "I see you're being bothered by those circle flies." The policeman says, "If that's what you call them, yes, they are somewhat annoying." The farmer says, "Yeah, we call them that because we see them circling around the rear ends of horses." The policeman says, "Did you just call me a horse's ass?" The farmer says, "Oh, no, sir, officer. I have way too much respect for those who serve in law enforcement to ever say such a thing." The policeman says, "Well, that's a good thing then." The farmer adds, "But it's hard to fool those circle flies." On a crisp autumn afternoon, old Mr. Carter, a weathered farmer with a face as lined as the fields he tilled, drove his rusty pickup truck to the neighbouring farmhouse. He parked by the white picket fence, the engine sputtering into silence, and stepped onto the porch. The air smelled of damp earth and freshly cut hay. He rapped on the door with his knuckles. After a moment, it creaked open, revealing a boy no older than 9. The lad had tousled hair, a smudge of dirt on his cheek, and a curious expression in his wide, blue eyes. "Hello there," Mr. Carter said, removing his hat and holding it against his chest. "Is your dad or mom around?" The boy shook his head. "Nope, they went into town for supplies. Won't be back till evening." Mr. Carter shifted uncomfortably, glancing down at his boots. "What about your brother, Tommy? Is he here?" The boy leaned against the doorframe, shaking his head again. "Tommy went with them." For a moment, the farmer stood there, silent, fiddling with the brim of his hat. The boy watched him patiently, sensing the man's unease. Finally, the boy spoke up. "I know where all the tools are if you need to borrow one. Or I can leave a message for Dad," he offered with a helpful smile. Mr. Carter cleared his throat, his face reddening slightly. "Well, son, it's not a tool I need. I need to speak to your dad about something important. You see, it's about your brother Tommy." The boy's smile faded, replaced by a look of concern. "What about Tommy?" Mr. Carter hesitated, then blurted out, "It's about him getting my daughter Mary pregnant." There was a long silence. The boy blinked, his young mind processing the weight of the farmer's words. Finally, he straightened up and scratched his head thoughtfully. "Well," he said slowly, "you'll have to talk to my dad about that. I know he charges $500 for the bulls and $150 for the pigs, but I have no idea how much he charges for Tommy." The boy's earnest reply hung in the air for a moment, before Mr. Carter's lips twitched upward in spite of himself. He chuckled, shook his head, and muttered something about kids these days as he turned and walked back to his truck. The boy watched him go, still leaning in the doorway, then shrugged and went back inside, leaving the screen door to creak shut behind him. Once upon a time, in a quaint little house, lived George and Edith, a charming couple in their golden years. Their home was filled with laughter, love, and an ancient WC that seemed to have a mind of its own. One sunny morning, George, with the bravado of a DIY expert, thanks to countless YouTube videos, declared, "Today, I'm fixing the toilet." Edith, stirring her tea, raised an eyebrow but decided to let him have his fun. With a tool belt that looked more like a fashion statement, complete with a rubber ducky for good luck, George marched into the bathroom. He bravely opened the lid, squinting at the inner workings like a true plumber in training. "First step, turn off the water," he proclaimed, confidently reaching for the valve. In his excitement, he turned it the wrong way, and suddenly, whoosh! Water sprayed everywhere like a scene from a slapstick comedy. George yelped, slipping and sliding on the now soaked floor, arms flailing. Edith, hearing the commotion, rushed in, only to burst into laughter at the sight. George, drenched and desperately trying to mop up with a bath towel while still holding his toolbox. "Need a hand, dear?" she chuckled. "Just a little help," George replied, trying to maintain his dignity, but the rubber ducky fell off his tool belt and floated by like a little lifeboat in the flood. After a wild few minutes, the water was finally turned off, but the bathroom looked like a scene from a disaster movie. "Well, that was refreshing," George said, dripping and grinning. Later, they called in a plumber, who walked in, took one look at the chaos, and chuckled. "I've seen a lot, but this is a new one." As the plumber fixed the toilet in record time, George and Edith shared a cup of tea, laughing over the unexpected adventure. "Next time, I think I'll leave the plumbing to the professionals," George declared. And from that day on, the legendary toilet troubles became a favourite story to tell at family gatherings, reminding everyone that sometimes the best memories come from the biggest mishaps. Moral of the story: sometimes a little chaos leads to a lot of laughter, especially when it comes to home repairs.